Yeah. The lines and appropriations, April 24th. We're taking up today the transportation bill, H488, which council here to walk us through that, and we have an amendment that this committee will have to issue to align the TiVo with what we did in the budget today. So thank you, much council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Daniel Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. What is the most helpful for the committee here? Would you like me to put the bill and the amendment up on the screen?
Yeah, I think that's
okay. Enjoy the meeting.
Unless the chair of the commission wants to have an opening statement about student.
Just say yes.
Okay. Right. So, section 1 of the bill is this is the bill section. It adopts the bill, the actual transportation program itself.
You have to go through all that.
Right.
There's a lot.
There's but mostly out by some transportation committee out now.
That's only that who link we got.
Some of the big pieces there from a budget standpoint. Section 2 is some money, but it's actually a technical amendment. So when you see the $260,000 in there, there was a typo in the actual transportation program going to a subsidy for the whacker, which is the railroad out here. This the little whacker, correct?
The one thing went on his next.
That's right. That was, as I told my wife, I got lunch on the 2 weeks ago. The subsidy for that was discontinued last year, but it was inadvertently included this year instead of repairs to the railroad junction. So that's all that is. Section 3 is requiring agency administration when they put together when they're balancing the books at the close of this fiscal year and the start of next fiscal year to have $686,000 in unobligated transportation fund balance. This is covering the amounts of money that were in lost revenues from reduced fees, reduced taxes in the motor vehicle bill, and the F-46, which was the warming bill. Those amounts are potentially going to change, and so this amount will potentially need to just change in the conference committee to reflect that now. This is essentially saying bookkeeping and savings from last year, make sure there is as much money left over to cover the lost revenues, which were not in the projections, as I understand it, for this year.
And just to remind the Senate passed lowering the purchasing tax on 4th Street and we lowered the fees on SSI and SSDI recipients for their drivers.
Section 4 will affect this committee a little bit. This is requiring updates in September and December from the Secretary of Transportation to the Joint Transportation Oversight Committee regarding state and federal funding. So, as you're probably aware at this point, the T-fund revenues were shown in March. There's some concern about the tourism stays in from our neighbors to the north. Then we may continue to see down revenues in the T-fund, which is primarily funded by gas and diesel taxes. So fuel travelers means less collections there. And then federal funding, as you know, there's a lot of upheaval With the funding in Washington, we've had a number of grants that are subject to 90-day delays. There are some questions about what will be authorized by Congress, so this is requiring follow-up. The section also includes two subsections, one which allows the Secretary of Transportation to basically ask JTAC to meet on 14 days notice if there's a significant reduction in state or federal funds that wasn't foreseen. And then the other is any time there's more than a 4% reduction in either state or federal funding, the Secretary is required to submit a written report detailing where the what appropriations and authorizations are going to be reduced to cover that lost money. So this is similar to the language we already have in Title 32 for a spending reduction report that has to come into joint fiscal if the state is down on revenues and needs to reduce spending. So the next several sections do not, if you don't mind, we'll take this down real quickly. We know what to watch. So numbers, the numbers are those flashing by. Most of it's transportation policy. It's worth noting, I won't pull the language up, but it's worth noting the discussions around the cost of Green Mountain Transit. There is language in here that adjusts the Green Mountain Transit Authority charter to allow flexibility with restructuring their service to with approval of agency of transportation, sort of restructuring public transit in the state, but hopefully make that a more sustainable system from a funding standpoint. For the next section that I'll put up for you is on state funding for town highways. This is putting together, some of you are probably familiar already, we have an inflator attached to the formula funding, which is the general state aid for town highways. Basically, it increases by either a percentage increase in transportation fund appropriations or the percentage increase in CPI. And we're doing the exact same thing for town highway structures and the town highway class 2 road program. So they're all being tied together so that they will not decrease, but if both transportation fund appropriations and the CPI increase, they'll increase by the lesser of the two. So if the fund appropriations are 1%, CPI is up 3%. The appropriations for these will go up by 1%. If either of them is zero or negative, it just stays flat. So we want to make sure that you get some increase in these funds, which have historically been fixed or determined for the year, but not at the expense of the overall system.
I just have to say anything about this. It's all based on numbers that are fixed in our budget numbers. It really has nothing to do with what the needs of towns are. And quite frankly, and they pick a CPI increase, and between 2021 and 23, cost of project is about 40%. So if you have a construction cost that go up 40% and you're increasing the aid we give by CPI, which is around 3, it seems kind of, it's all house language. We don't object to it, but it seems kind of silly.
And that segues nicely to the next two sections that I'll talk about, which are these are just report sections. They're worth highlighting. The first is a 2-year review and report back on how we assess the municipal transportation needs and then divvy up that funding with the aim of coming up with a system that prioritizes roads and other transportation assets that have a significant impact on the region around them.
Senator Lyons.
I have a question for the chair of transportation.
No, it's a tough.
It's very difficult. No, but honestly, the question is, did you consider adding in here the Regional Planning Commission for consultation? Because they do have.
They are actually.
They are. Oh,
This is
I'm in.
Vermont Association.
There it is.
That's the.
Yeah,
I'll give you the most local example, and if we get one of the things, if you get class 2 roadway or you get a structures grant, you can only get those grants on a rolling basis every 3 to 5 years. If, for example, I'll use Montpelier, for example, if something goes wrong with Route 2 out by the roundabout or any of that, or on a daily basis, how many people take Town Hill Road as the bypass for Route 2, and how many people, if something happened on Route 2, would have to go on Town Hill Road? There are those roads all over the state that are of significant regional importance. Should we be holding them up if a culvert is going to go out on an important road like that? Should we be holding that up to get a grant? I don't think so. I quite frequently in Williston, as you're coming on the North Williston Road, and there's a little turn off that goes by Adams, and that road down through there. That road that takes a lot of traffic off for the village of that. If they had a culvert there, should that road have priority?
so that is section 16. Section 17 is looking at, we have an awful lot of different highway aid and municipal grant programs. The question that's come up is essentially, are there ways that we can make that process of doling out state money more efficient and find efficiencies and improvements? So instead of getting 5 different state grants to pay for portions of one project, could that come out of 1 or 2 grant pools instead of spending all that time filling out grant applications and processing grants? And would that allow us to use the state funds more effectively? The next piece here, this is more of a finance issue, but it will affect you. It's and you in the budget that came over from the House, there was $1 million in one-time general fund for the mileage-based user fee design. I believe that you want to take that out or have taken that out because we are now anticipating that the federal grant that was on hold will be dispersed. And so this is updated legislative intent and design language that we originally approved 2 years ago. Because of delays with the federal grant, we're now moving out the goal dates and so forth, and just updating the language to reflect that we, appropriated $350,000 more last fiscal year, et cetera. So that's what these 3 sections are, that this ties into that piece on the mileage-based user fee. And there is an addition of intent language that the mileage-based user fee for a battery electric or all electric vehicle is going to be approximately equivalent to the average amount collected by the state in fuel tax revenues from the use of a non-plug-in electric vehicle registered in Vermont. So does that make sense? Great. And then
Totally.
And then the last piece of that too is that it's the mileage-based user fee for electric vehicles will be an interim step towards gradually expanding it. As most of you know, we've been talking about the mileage-based user fee for probably almost as long as I've been here. And so that is, it's a slow process, but they wanted to reiterate there was a lot of discussion of, will this just be electric vehicles or will it go to all cars? And the goal is eventually all cars at some point. And then there's updates on that will be provided to JTOC over the summer. There is, yep, Mr. Chair.
One more comment. There is, as you do move into gas vehicles, there are a lot of questions around that we're going to have to answer. For example, would you take a gas vehicle that gets 40 miles to the gallon versus a car that's doing 15 miles to the gallon? And would, if you do that and you charge a flat rate per mile of miles traveled, it disadvantages the higher, and do you want to do that? So there's a lot of questions to work out.
Well, pleasure then.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and questions though.
Yeah,
But we aren't there.
Right, I know. Not here, not right.
so that's a preview of coming attractions. Like
Yeah.
we're on episode 1 and that's like episode 6.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah.
Where's the Phantom Menace?
Does it go?
Oh, if we're on
I'll go
episode
4, 5,
1,
and 6.
we're unfortunately there. So, oh, please. Anyway, the next section worth talking about, you appropriated money in fiscal year 2024 to electrify your fleet. That program has been underutilized and there is a little over $325,000 still remaining in the program. The proposal here is to authorize the Secretary of Transportation to use that to continue the partnership with Drive Electric Vermont, which has been successful for the state, instead of leaving the money in electrify your fleet where it has not been going out the door.
So this continues what we have been.
With Drive Electric Vermont, yes.
Which is a great website. What's that? It's a great website. You should check it. All right.
I was gonna do that.
All right, I will skip ahead a bit more. I think we're getting close to the end of the appropriations related things in here.
So I want some.
Is that the only appropriation we would have for Drive Electric?
That is,
So otherwise, they either discontinue or they have to have other funds.
Drive Electric, I mean, that part of what they do, like Efficiency Vermont has some incentives that they do, like their incentive to car dealers. When a dealer sells an electric car, they give them an extra couple $100. Then they do some other education work and they have a grant program to have dealers put in electric charging equipment. That's separate than Drive Electric Vermont, which is part of EBT, BIC's work. But Drive Electric is really the educational outreach, education information. So the website mainly, but also I think some other, like just general public education about electric vehicles.
I think there was a lot of sentiment on that we would have liked to have done more, but I think the highlight here is this budget has us paving 123 miles of roads. The budget year we're in right now was 200. If we continue on the path that we are in this year's budget, we're going to go from 26% of our roads in poor or very poor condition to by 2029, 4 years from now, we'll be at 60% of our roads in poor or very poor condition. So we have very little room to move in here. And this is including getting back, relieving the T fund of the expense of the JTOC transfer, which was around 20 million. That 20 million though was not a growing revenue source. And that's our overall problem.
Don't disagree. That all makes sense. I'm just anticipating next year. This money's gone.
If you give us some more flexibility, with a growing revenue source, we'd be happy to be accommodating.
And the agency thought they were going to do the DA grant.
Oh.
So last year when we wrote this year's budget, we thought they were like, well, we don't need any more money because we're going to get this big EPA grant.
Gotcha.
Which they did not.
So we're under pressure.
That makes sense.
Right. So,
That driving money.
always fun being in this room.
He doesn't like getting transportation anyway.
Depends on the day. I'll leave it at that. So the next one here, you're gonna see a new version of this in just a minute. This is $600,000 that your transportation committee proposed to appropriate from the general fund to the agency in this coming fiscal year to allow public transit agencies to hire volunteer coordinators. Since COVID-19, the number of volunteer drivers for the demand response driver programs that drive individuals on Medicaid or individuals, older individuals to medical appointments and other things has dropped significantly. They're having trouble locating volunteers. The idea here is to help them get some volunteer coordinators to hopefully expand that pool. There are 4 other sections on this that follow this that don't have money in them. And your transportation committee, as I've been working here, emails are coming in. They are working with DEVA and the Public Transit Association and the hospitals to try to come up with language that works for everyone. So preview of coming attractions on the floor, there may be additional amendment language to tweak that. You are going to have language in front of you that changes where this money is coming from. So it will be transportation fund money instead of general fund money, and we're moving some other money around to facilitate that. So we'll get there in a second.
Just a quick question for you. I'm confused somewhat, and sometimes it doesn't take much, but in the reading here, $600,000 is appropriated for the purpose of providing grants to public transit agencies to hire volunteer coordinators. Volunteer. Maybe Rich can expand it.
Yeah,
What is that?
they're coordinating the volunteers there now.
Yeah, so they are hiring an individual who does the job of scheduling volunteers, recruiting volunteers, finding ways to retain volunteers, etc.
They're not volunteer coordinators, they're coordinators of volunteers.
I see a lot of volunteers out there, but.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I got that.
So to give you the number, in 2019, there were 300 people that volunteered their time statewide that we paid for their mileage, but they got no reimbursement. And most of them drove their own cars to take people mostly to medical appointments and to dialysis or whatever it is. In 2020, during COVID, that dropped to from 300 to 150.
It was like three something.
Right. And they're back up to about 175. The thought is a lot of people don't know anything about this program, and particularly in rural parts of the state, and RCT is moving into the eastern side of Franklin County. In rural parts of the state, as we contract medical services, and we run into problems. St. Johnsbury that just went from 5 days a week dialysis down to 2. They're talking about eliminating dialysis in Newport. How are people that are older or low income supposed to get to those dialysis appointments unless we start to pick up our game? And I will say this was, we met with Health and Welfare, and Health and Welfare I think is supportive of.
Very. This is one of the big problems that we have in the state is transportation, especially in the Northeast.
Yeah, that is it for the money pieces, so I can move right on to the amendment if you'd like, or are there more questions?
And there is, did you do a fiscal note, Logan?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Logan.
There's a fiscal note, so for the record, Logan Mover at the Joint Fiscal Office, it is de minimis. There's the one that's fee attached to rules around the rail trail uses, it's a $300 fee, so it's a de minimis impact.
What's the $300 fee?
It's an existing fine
Oh,
and statute
fine.
for violation of, for violation of rules adopted related to rail trails. And what the agency asked for was for us to put in specific statutory list of certain activities that are prohibited, littering, damaging the trail or structures on the trail,
Don't forget my favorite.
Molesting fish.
harassing or molesting wildlife, except for fishing.
Except you can.
It's basically saying that fishing is molesting, harassing, but yeah.
Well,
Can you harass
From their
and
point-
molest a fish?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Fish, I-
That they're arguing that fishing is apparently that, so, and then the question is, you know, which kind of fishing? Bait fishing, lure fishing,
Doesn't say.
live spear, oh,
Spear fishing.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
I think it's definitely going into molesting one of them.
You can
You
shoot
didn't
it.
cover the Brennan sports car.
I also skipped over that, so there,
there's
$600,000 charge.
There's apparently a car in here.
well, it's, yeah.
We already talked.
We're online.
yeah. When you phrase it that way, it doesn't sound so good. Yes, there is a section in here to deal with ultra low volume vehicle manufacturers, which and the section includes folks who build a car in their own garage, whether it's kit car or they put it together from new and used parts. So right now, there's two things that makes it hard to do that. One is emissions requirements. Because getting your exhaust certified by the EPA is very expensive. The other are safety requirements. That said, California, who has very strict emissions requirements, has a process for allowing these very small companies to basically come within the law without going through the process of getting an EPA certification. So there is a section in here that requires a report back on what the process could look like for Vermont, knowing we are not California and do not have their resources, but is there a way that we can
And
bring that on board
and
and
the car
allow?
company's in Milton and they want to build 6 cars.
They build 6 cars a year,
Cars a year.
6 cars. Yeah,
Up
but
to-
yeah.
In order.
there's,
600,000 a car.
What kind of car?
Oh, they can build
it's still, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is that here? Yeah. Oh, that's what that was?
the one out on
Yeah, that
the.
is-
yeah,
Oh, sure.
yeah,
That's
so
the,
they are one of those companies that takes a classic design and then builds it out of carbon fiber with modern engine and modern electronics. They're really fancy cars, but yeah, they start at about $500,000 and some of them go well over $1 million.
you can buy one with some of your spare change.
So we had interrupted Logan really on.
Yes.
Sorry, the de minimis fee, that's the only thing that's.
That was the only section, and then my note highlights some of the other sections that Damien already mentioned, such as the change in the town highway, aid appropriation, stuff like that, but let's touch those points.
So you don't really address in fiscal note, just general transportation expenditure, because that was just.
On your webpage, there is the budget on the page documents. I can walk you through those as well, those highlighted.
Yeah, we're going to go through that in transportation tomorrow, but he's got it. Great.
And those just reflect what was passed in the budget, so I'm happy to talk to you about those if you want, but it's up to you.
No, because there's no, since we are eliminating the JTOC transfer, there really is no general fund impact of the defund here. And except for this little switcheroo that we're talking about right now, that's not general fund either.
Yep.
Okay, so now we can move to the amendment. So I'm proposing the appropriation committee make this amendment to the T-bill. Or no, you guys are doing. What did we do? What did we say?
Well,
You guys meaning us
I
in
think-
transportation.
we're gonna, we voted the amendment within transportation to deal with the hiring. Do we need to do anything? We need to do, if the money's coming out of the pilot fund and you have to move the
Well,
money.
we did that in the in the budget bill.
Yeah.
So the question is, should the transportation committee make this amendment to the T bill on the floor, or should the appropriations committee make this amendment to the?
Well, so right now it's drafted as Committee on Appropriations. If the Transportation Committee makes the amendment, I can wrap all of this into whatever you end up coming up with. There's what I'm gonna start calling the Tim Adams section to the bill, which I'm still working on.
Sorry,
That's okay.
is that the client friendly? Yeah.
Yes, it is, it's time consuming to put that together.
It was a
but
billion.
it was, next time
I don't know, the former election council seemed to like it, but the new one.
Well, all I would say, it was a great rebrand because of the stuff that we were already doing.
Yeah,
And it just put it all together and everybody went, wow, in a way that they never have.
yes.
So,
I will say that, my predecessor, has left extremely large shoes to fill, so, I now have a full appreciation of just how much work she was here.
She made it look like she wasn't doing that much.
Right, she made it look very,
Although, except you get emails from her that were like 11:30 p.m. saying that she did a lot.
yeah, so, yeah, I appreciate her even more, now that I see what she used to do. We miss you, Anthea, so, anyway, first instance of amendment here. This is, changing where the money is coming from for the town highway non-federal disasters money. So this is money the state has when you have a disaster that isn't large enough to qualify for federal relief. And so, right, the original proposal was to put 1.15 million of T fund into it. This is changing that to 1.15 million from the pilot special fund. So subsection B here provides that it's amounts appropriated from the pilot special fund pursuant to 32 VSA section 3709. There is language already in the budget doing this and providing that this money cannot be put into the T fund. If it is unspent, it reverts to the pilot special fund at the end of the fiscal year.
The question may or may not be related here, but the decision by the federal government not to issue FEMA funds. How is that going to affect our highway disasters?
So, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that fully. I know there's a variety of things going on at FEMA, but I think the agency would be able to better answer how that's impacting so there is a federal disaster line item in the transportation program, but then there's also separate FEMA money that was in the news today for doing projects to mitigate future problems. And I don't know enough about what's happening at FEMA to give you a good sense of that. Logan, do you know any more?
I think it is currently unknown what will be occurring in that program.
This is also part of why we have the check back that I mentioned, is because of these unknowns.
Did you see my email earlier today about this language? I remember if you were on it with Emily, because I asked a question about what we were doing in the budget. She said, well, we're not really appropriating the pilot funds, we're just giving transportation authority to spend that money.
And this.
Yeah, so
We want to give it authority, you appropriated it within the big bill.
yeah,
Without funds, and then this language would authorize. Within
The authority.
the bill. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's what you meant.
so the language here, the key language is spending is authorized as follows. And then the footnote, which is what this is describing, is just describing what that other funds is referring to.
Okay.
And so we're saying,
So you
Our
move
amounts
money
that were appropriated.
within the big bill.
That's what I thought we were doing. So I didn't know if there was, I just wanted to make sure that the two were aligned, this amendment and what we have.
yeah, they are. So I drafted them concurrently.
Yeah, okay.
So
And
this is in the T bill and that's in.
should be,
And I think overall, we're not gonna make any other amendments to the 488, but if the transportation committee is gonna have a floor amendment, it makes more sense to me for this to come from the transportation committee And then appropriations can stand up and say, you know, this is to conform with what we did in the budget, unless you have a preference.
I would like to see us direct the hiring of the 4 people within the depot.
Yeah, so that's all to say that we're not going to be amending the transportation bill.
Okay.
But we can take a straw vote if anybody has any concerns about this from the appropriation, because we're moving money around.
And I will move this into the transportation committee's amendment that I'm working on, which we're still finalizing language on. And hopefully will tomorrow.
But does anybody object? If I got up on the floor and said that the appropriations committee was unanimous in support of this transportation amendment to their own bill?
I might.
Yes.
I'll look checking with you about the ultra low vehicle manufacturer thing, but that's not money.
That's fine.
That's not part of this,
Right.
amendment. Okay.
Right. So the important thing is there is no exception from emissions law in this current language.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
we,
that would require.
and the other piece is, this just brings us an idea of how we could do this, so it doesn't do it.
Right.
Because there
Right,
was some
exactly.
language about exempting emissions at one point that.
It is in there, because California has an exemption from the EPA emissions requirements. It's through their Air Resources Board, and they have a process set up to,
For small.
for smaller manufacturers. I think the bottom line is, it seems like a nice idea at first. And the question is, well, what are the details?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So, yeah.
I may have a suggestion around just one of the things that may be in the report,
Yeah,
Okay,
and which is not.
yeah,
that's right. Right now, it's a DMV report back.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did I could be wrong, but I thought I remembered them saying it does exempt us from EPA inspection or whatever. But it doesn't exempt us from the standards. In other words, our standards, when the exhaust does come out of the muffler, it's going to meet the law standards.
I think that's my understanding of what
That's what I thought.
California does, is because they're,
It's just how we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there were some issues about whether the electronics could hook up to when the inspection tabulate. I thought there was some issue about that.
Yeah.
they're, one of the problems here is you have non-standard parts.
Right.
And I don't know all the details, but I think that that's the main issue here. So they're building a bespoke frame and chassis for this car, and then putting in small manufactured parts around it, including, a specialty engine, which takes an existing Corvette engine and then tunes it up, and then they drop all of this in, so nothing in the car is standard. And then they put it into the inspection system, which is designed for your Chevy or your Nissan or whatever, what have you.
I guess what we don't want to happen though, somebody used this for some coal rolling vehicle. They're like, hey, I only make 2 of these a year, so I can just like burn coal and just put.
Yeah.
This is the first car that's been built in Vermont since the company in Bennington built a car in 1925.
Was that an electric car?
Well, that's the one that's in the Bennington Museum.
But there was one in Brandon that was built too.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks. But I'm happy to get some information on the
Yeah.
California program for you.
And
If you don't
apparently
mind,
these guys are making parts, special parts for vehicles that people can't get.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I would entertain a motion to move 480 in favor.
I'll move that.
Okay. That being the case, if there's no more discussion, the clerk can call the roll.
Okay. Set, H 488, Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Watson,
Yep.
The root,
Yes, with an explanation.
the root lines,
Yes.
Westman.
Yep.
Senator Bennett, yes, Senator Birchwood.
Cover them all.
My explanation is that I know there's Lamoille Rail Trail money hidden in there. I'm voting yes.
I heard that, he said it's
So this is favorable with amendment.
No, we're not.
No,
No, they're not gonna, we're amending.
We're gonna do that. That's right.
We, the transportation committee, that's part of the appropriation.
24. Yeah, takes what?
424.
420.
And it's 424 at the time almost.
It's 420.
Reporter,
But you got 300. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the appropriation setting. We're okay with it. It's not, I don't have to report to them.
right? No, you don't have to.
Yeah. I felt like I haven't reported anything, but I'll be doing a lot next week. Might as well.
We can do all of
Should do all the bills.
Do a full kitchen.
it.
She would do the whole
Yeah. Should do other committees bills.
thing. Yeah. And I can basically
Okay,
be
so
I missed our number, sir.
we're gonna do section by section.
Thank you for this.
Yes, so that's the other thing we have to do. So we're having an amendment on the budget. So we found some technical issues. Another issue, BHFA, remember we combined two of their programs and said they have authority
Yeah,
to
spend the money, yeah.
but they wanted to put the third one in there as well, which we did last year. So it's similar language last year. Like there'd be one grant for the 3 programs, but we'll say they have to spend at least $1 million on the first home buyers. So it just makes it administratively easier for them. There was technical things. What was the others?
Positions,
What positions?
the state's attorneys.
Oh, right. The state's attorneys that we said were permanent. The language says it's only for 1 year. So that was an error that we didn't catch.
So we're changing it to
So we're changing it for permanent.
Oh, I heard about
Yeah. Yeah. I heard about it last night. I said, we'll check it.
it. I didn't hear about it last night.
And then we checked it and then they checked it and saw that it was just said for 1 year. Cause I don't know how they're gonna do that.
But DGOs was all right, though.
Yeah.
Better general.
Yeah, I did ask for that. Yeah. So somehow, which just made them more mad.
I ordered for my chairs.
Go to the chair. So we're gonna make that correction, make sure those are permanent, because that's definitely, in my strong view, what the committee is meant to do, that those were to be permanent. We always mentioned it as a permanent, not 1 more year. And then there was one technical thing, but so,
And I'm confused, I don't know about the farm, we just missed one of the ones.
we created the farm security grants at $1 million, but we didn't actually move it into the farm security fund, things like that. So tomorrow, it's Friday, so we'll probably see that Friday, and we can, the goal is to present this bill on Wednesday. And I thought when we're gonna open a suggestion for what's stand out, of course, everybody will have, they'll have their addendum sheet, which is I recommend if you're working on your floor report to use the addendum, because that's what they'll have in front of them, and you can refer to the page number. If you're,
Do we have that? We're going to get that.
We got.
It's on your
That's on our,
It's on your.
it's on your desk
our desk.
today.
Hopefully you didn't draw that.
Should have been, everybody got one today, I think,
I gotta go check.
Mhm.
Probably still.
but we can also,
Well,
I mean, because you can use something like this, but this, the page number.
the difficulty comes is you've got your numbers section, which you can pretty much get out of the web. But the difficulty is you have the corresponding numbers with your language.
We got more to do. Yeah, we're gonna get my den and find somebody's girl.
I'll get your addendum, but it is, you do have the numbers which will be in the, but they correspond to the language in the back. That's what makes it.
Been away.
So,
Still alive.
so we're gonna talk about our floor report today, so if you don't wanna.
Yeah.
Be here, you don't have.
Sounds good. Yeah. Do I need to check in with you? before
Yes,
the day?
you need to, we got some lectures back.
Thanks, Bud.
And, the public, are we off?
No, you're
We're
still,
not, because I wanted
what
to
if
say,
you, shoot me an email when you're done and I'll come on over and chat.
Where is your office?
So 2A, you can come over to second floor.
Is it open or is it closed?
If you have a badge, you can badge
Oh,
in.
I don't know. I'll see if I can find
you
it.
could just start knocking on the windows.
Yeah,
I'll,
Their firearms aren't allowed over there, so you probably won't get shot. So the
Decent bet.
web report we're gonna hand out, but I wondered if we could print it out like this instead of like this. Can you tell the difference about which one's easier to read?
I can.
Wait, but you want the one with,
Larger, right?
We want, why would we,
Some have like 93 pages.
maybe,
Oh,
we can
this is
also,
just a lot easier to read than this.
yeah, we can also do one, there's pros and cons that had only the changes.
Only this part, oh, like only pages. No, I wanted to.
You want the whole thing?
My idea is to give every senator the whole thing so that they can see what the whole load of hay is, the senator official section. Because a lot of new senators, and this just says this is the entire budget, everything's in here. They can look in every single part of government. I don't think they're gonna ask us about, every
well, if I do
flexible
that,
pathway
if I do the health department, I'm gonna say the health department is bam sections. And, the only sections that have changed from last year in the health department is this section and this section, and this as well.
So I'm not saying you, like, if you have health access and there's no change in there, you just say there's no change. But I'm gonna suggest that we kind of organize our floor reports based on the order of this. Based on our assignments, although I don't want to jump around too much, so I'm not, I haven't
So
figured
do
out how
you
we.
want us to incorporate with the web report the numbers and then go to the back of the bill and talk about the language changes? It all in one package
Together.
and put it together?
I think so. They'll have to kind of flip around in here, which I think is fine, which we don't have to go from front to back, because some people have this section and then the next person doesn't have the section. So I'm just saying, what I'm proposing to hand out is the web report. The Emily Burns Secrets of Wonder, I'm calling it. These,
So,
and a highlight sheet that JFO created.
and who does the one times?
I was going to propose that anything that in your sections of government you would cover, whether they want on any
I was
base.
hoping you would do that.
I could do that, but you could also say, here's my sections of government. Here's what's happening with those sections, including any one times.
Okay.
But I'm open to suggestions.
So that is helpful. I was wondering if we were gonna go through it as far, like, in terms of like numerical order as opposed to by person. Just because like my sections are,
Right,
you know, they're a little bit scattered.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So I'm like, oh, you know, I'll stand up like 3 times, but if it's just by person, then I'll just do, these are my sections. Boom, 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 boom.
right.
And then
It's hard for the listener, for us to skip around.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's easier to go.
It's easier to go in order.
if we just go in order,
It is.
I don't care which one.
Otherwise, they're gonna get lost. First,
I mean, if we're trying to follow either the addendum or the thing, will cause us to jump around. But I think it's, I mean, it's more difficult for people to follow, but I think that's just tough luck for those people that are, because otherwise the easiest is to do one person. We're not gonna do it.
Trust.
We could just say trust us. Trust Rich.
Yeah.
Specific.
Specific.
Yeah.
Richie Raccoon.
So I was thinking that each senator would go and it would cause jumping around in the web report and the addendum. But that's just something that is.
Okay.
I think, because if you go through the one times, you're also jumping around.
Right.
But you could say, like, here are my sections, you'll find these lines on the one time, these changes here. But that's my proposal right now, how we do it, but people can.
And we're also gonna be highlighting things, not necessarily going through every.
Yeah, just like, here are the big changes, here's something, that's was a major decision or a focus that we want to bring your attention to.
And I'm thinking specifically now, of like the PCB funds, which is part of the environmental conservation fund.
Right.
I assume I would cover that because that's, it's the environmental conservation fund. So any funds that are sort of related.
Kind of within
by-
the DEC, that's what.
Yeah, even though it's related to education, it's related to, health and welfare, so.
Yes, and so maybe people can look at that, and if there's any questions, like, is this my section, or is this whose section is it? There's some overlying sections. And then I would do an overview at the beginning, and maybe I would, the highlights will cover some of the things that are in the section, so it might be like, as already mentioned, these changes, but, or not.
Andy, will JFO be preparing like it did for Jane? She always had a highlight sheet. And then she would have 2 or 3 handouts, but one was always a highlight sheet, full budget. And that's where we mostly send it over.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I'm assuming we'll have a session before we gavel in where you'll talk about the overview.
Right, cost of whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can do that, do the overview, which I can also do when we start the bill, and then we'll draw up like a run a show, so to speak, of thing, this person will yield to this senator, to this senator.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm also open to JFO, because you might be asked to help,
And they can't.
maybe it makes more work for JFO.
During the,
What's more work?
Yeah, well, right. You can stay up till 11.
You should volunteer for AD because.
I have to be honest, I wasn't listening. I'm not
That's
really
fine.
sure what I'm not being or not being volunteered to do, so I guess.
We don't know.
Just say yes.
No.
You may or may not have more work to do.
Okay.
well, you with that more.
But I think it's when it was just Jane, it was a little easier on JFO, because you're kind of like helping one person to present the whole budget. This way, you might get questions from more people about their sections.
We can help.
Yeah, and I assume that's what happens in House. And we're less people than there, so it's already. Yes.
Yeah.
We're easy to.
I will, no comment.
So probably we'll just check in again. Most important. Tomorrow as well, and then Tuesday. We're doing the transportation bill. Wednesday, we would do caucus of all the same day we presented. We don't do it one day.
We do it right before. So
Yeah.
people have questions, they can ask them, and then because if we did it on different days, they would have forgotten the answers.
Right.
And ask them.
Right.
They'd be asking twice.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so we'll. Because tomorrow, we don't really have anything on our agenda.
There's nothing on the agenda at this moment.
Because we don't have any other bills
We
yet.
just passed bill for 219.
Of 219 from, that's the child care.
That's the TCF family.
I think that's the child care.
You see how?
TCF what?
I think
Now I'm confusing everybody.
What's the
Uh,
number?
No, it's EOC Family Support Program.
Big difference.
Family support
Very
program meeting.
Yes.
The child care, it's not the child care licensing. bill?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about 219, whatever that is. Assuming that we can have testimony, but we don't have to do it tomorrow, we can do it later, hopefully. And that's about all we'll do tomorrow, so we'll have a short day.